The mountain village doctor who saved Asher Kane's life was the same surgeon whose career his company had destroyed with defective medical equipment. Dr. Amara Okafor had been living in Swiss exile for 3 years, running a rural clinic and believing she'd killed 3 children through surgical errors. What she didn't know was that the cardiac deaths were caused by Kane Technologies' CardioSafe monitors giving false readings, while the company blamed medical professionals and fought lawsuits to protect profits. When tech billionaire Asher's car broke down on her mountain road, they fell in love over shared meals and honest conversations about finding real purpose. But the truth was devastating. 15 children had died worldwide from the monitor defects, and Amara's 3 patients were just the beginning of a corporate cover-up that had destroyed innocent doctors' lives. Now Asher faced the ultimate test: expose his own company's crimes and lose his empire, or protect his fortune and lose the woman who'd taught him what integrity actually meant. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like this video, and comment where you're watching from. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories, and trust me, you won't want to miss them. Now let's get into the story. The sleek black Bentley roared up the winding mountain road through the Swiss Alps, its engine echoing off the towering peaks that surrounded the narrow highway. Behind the wheel, tech billionaire Asher Kane gripped the steering wheel tighter with each hairpin turn, his knuckles white with tension that had nothing to do with the treacherous driving conditions. His phone buzzed incessantly on the passenger seat, his assistant Jennifer calling for the 5th time in an hour, probably with updates about the collapsed merger with Hartmann Industries. $60 billion down the drain because Klaus Hartmann had discovered that Asher's intended bride, supermodel Victoria Sterling, was actually feeding inside information to competing companies. Another gold digger. Another woman who saw his bank account before she saw him. Asher had sworn off relationships 6 months ago after discovering that his previous girlfriend had been secretly recording their intimate conversations to sell to tabloids. Before that, it was the art gallery owner who'd seduced him to gain access to his private collection for her own profit. Before that, the socialite who'd faked a pregnancy to trap him into marriage. 34 years old, worth $8 billion, and he couldn't find a single woman who wanted him for anything other than his money. The mountains stretched endlessly around him, their snow-capped peaks piercing a gray sky that matched his mood. He'd escaped to Switzerland to think, to breathe, to figure out why every relationship in his life felt like a business transaction. That's when the engine started sputtering. No, 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 Asher muttered, pulling over to the side of the narrow mountain road. Steam was rising from under the hood, and the temperature gauge was firmly in the red zone. He stepped out into the crisp alpine air, his expensive Italian suit completely inappropriate for the mountain environment. The nearest village, according to his GPS, was still 20 kilometers away, and his phone showed no signal. For a man who controlled technology that connected billions of people worldwide, Asher Kane was completely stranded. He'd been standing beside his disabled car for maybe 10 minutes when he heard footsteps on the gravel behind him. Turning around, he saw a woman walking up the road toward him, carrying what looked like a medical bag. She was beautiful in a way that was completely natural. No makeup, no designer clothes, no obvious attempts to catch his attention. Her dark skin glowed with health, and her hair was wrapped in a colorful headscarf that suggested African heritage. She wore simple hiking clothes and sturdy boots, moving with the confident stride of someone who knew these mountains well. "Car trouble?" she asked in accented English, her voice warm with genuine concern. "Engine overheated," Asher replied, surprised by how relieved he felt just to see another person. "I'm afraid I'm not very good with car repairs. Let me take a look." She set down her bag and approached the Bentley without any of the intimidated reverence most people showed around his expensive possessions. These luxury cars aren't really built for mountain driving. She popped the hood and peered at the engine with knowledgeable eyes. You've got a coolant leak. Probably happened gradually, but the mountain driving made it worse. Are you a mechanic? Asher asked, impressed by her quick diagnosis. Not exactly, she said with a small smile. But I work with systems that need to keep running no matter what, so you learn to troubleshoot problems quickly. She pulled out a water bottle from her pack. This will get you running temporarily, but you'll need proper repairs before you can drive much farther. As she added water to the radiator, Asher found himself studying her profile. There was something about her manner, confident, competent, completely unfazed by meeting a stranger on a deserted mountain road. I'm Asher, he said, deliberately omitting his last name. Amara, she replied, not looking up from the engine. There, that should get you to the village. But you'll need to stop every few kilometers to let the engine cool down. Which village? Bergdorf. It's about 15 kilometers down this road. Hans at the garage can fix your coolant system properly. Asher felt a strange reluctance to get back in his car and drive away from this competent, caring stranger. What about you? Do you need a ride somewhere? I'm walking to Bergdorf myself, actually. I have some work to do there. Then please let me drive you. It's the least I can do after you fix my car. Amara hesitated, clearly weighing the wisdom of accepting a ride from a stranger. But the afternoon was growing cold, and dark clouds were gathering over the peaks. All right, she said finally. Thank you. As they drove down the mountain road, stopping every few kilometers to let the engine cool, Asher found himself more intrigued by his passenger than he'd been by anyone in years. Amara spoke knowledgeably about the local geography, the wildlife, the small communities scattered throughout the Alps. How long have you lived in this area? He asked. About 3 years now. I moved here from London. London to rural Switzerland is quite a change. What brought you to the mountains? Something flickered across Amara's face, a shadow of old pain or regret. Sometimes you need to go somewhere quiet to remember who you really are. Asher understood that feeling completely. And did you? Remember who you are? I remembered what matters, Amara said quietly. Taking care of people, being useful, making a difference in small ways. What kind of work do you do? I run a community health clinic. Nothing fancy, just basic medical care for people who can't easily get to the hospitals in the bigger cities. A community health worker. Someone who'd chosen service over profit, helping over personal gain. Asher couldn't remember the last time he'd met someone whose career was about giving rather than taking. That sounds incredibly rewarding, he said, meaning it. It is, though it's not exactly lucrative, Amara said with a self-deprecating laugh. Good thing the cost of living is low in the mountains. They reached Bergdorf just as the first snowflakes began to fall. The village was picturesque in the way that alpine communities often were. Wooden chalets with flower boxes, narrow cobblestone streets, church bells tolling the hour. Amara directed him to Hans's garage, where the elderly Swiss mechanic took one look at the Bentley and whistled low. Fancy car for mountain driving, Hans said in heavily accented English. But yes, I can fix. Will take 2 days for parts to arrive from Zurich. 2 days stranded in a village of maybe 300 people. Normally, Asher would have called for his helicopter or arranged for a rental car. But something about the peaceful mountain setting made him hesitate. Is there a hotel in town? He asked. The Gasthaus has rooms, Amara said. It's clean and comfortable. Maria makes excellent dinners. What about you? Where are you staying? I have a small cottage on the other side of the village. The clinic is attached to it. Have you ever had a chance encounter with a stranger that made you question everything about your life? How did that meeting change your perspective? Let me know in the comments. As they walked through the village toward the Ghost House, Asher noticed how everyone they passed greeted Amara warmly. Children ran up to hug her legs. Elderly villagers stopped to chat with her in rapid German. Shopkeepers waved from their doorways. "You're very popular here," Asher observed. "Small communities look out for each other," Amara said simply. "When you help people, they help you back." The Ghost House was exactly what Asher had expected, cozy, traditional, with rooms that probably hadn't been updated since the 1970s. But it was clean and warm, and Maria the proprietor was delighted to have a guest during the slow autumn season. "Will you join me for dinner?" Asher asked Amara as she prepared to leave. She hesitated. "I have some patients to check on this evening." "After that, then? I'd like to hear more about your work here." "Why?" The question was direct, without any coyness or flirtation. "Because," Asher said honestly, "I can't remember the last time I met someone who seemed so content, so at peace with their choices." Amara studied his face for a long moment, as if trying to read his motivations. "All right," she said finally. "I'll meet you back here around 8. After she left, Asher sat in his room overlooking the village square, watching the snow fall more heavily outside his window. For the first time in months, he wasn't thinking about market share or product launches or board meetings. He was thinking about a woman who fixed cars and ran medical clinics, and seemed to have found something that all his billions couldn't buy: genuine happiness. At 8 o'clock, he was waiting in the Ghost House dining room when Amara arrived. She'd changed into a simple blue dress that brought out the warmth in her dark eyes, and her hair was uncovered now, falling in natural waves around her shoulders. "How were your patients?" Asher asked as they settled at a corner table. "Good. Mrs. Weber's blood pressure is finally under control, and little Klaus's ear infection is clearing up nicely." Amara smiled. "Nothing dramatic, but that's usually the best kind of medical day." Over dinner, traditional Swiss fare that was hearty and delicious, Asher found himself opening up to Amara in ways he rarely did with anyone. Maybe it was the mountain setting, or maybe it was her genuine interest in his answers, but he told her about the pressures of running a global company, the isolation of extreme wealth, the difficulty of forming real relationships when everyone wanted something from you. "That sounds lonely," Amara said with genuine sympathy. "It is, but it's also safe. When you don't let anyone close, they can't disappoint you. They also can't surprise you with kindness, or challenge you to grow, or make you laugh when you least expect it." Asher looked at her across the candlelit table. "Is that what you do? Surprise people with kindness?" "I try to see people for who they really are, not what they can do for me." "And what do you see when you look at me?" Amara was quiet for a moment, considering her answer carefully. "I see someone who's forgotten how to trust," she said finally. "Someone who's built walls so high that he can't remember what it feels like to let someone in." The observation was so accurate it took Asher's breath away. "What about you?" he asked. "What made you choose this life?" A medical clinic in a tiny Swiss village seems like an unusual career path for someone with your education and intelligence. Again, that shadow crossed Amara's face. "Sometimes the path chooses you." "That's not really an answer. It's the only answer I can give right now." Asher sensed there was a story there, something painful that had driven her to these mountains, to this simple life of service. But he didn't push. Whatever her secrets, she was entitled to them. They talked until the restaurant closed, ranging from books to travel to philosophy. Amara was well-read, articulate, and had opinions on everything from global health policy to sustainable technology. She challenged his assumptions, made him laugh, and listened to his ideas without any agenda beyond genuine curiosity. When they finally parted outside the Ghost House, Asher felt something he hadn't experienced in years: reluctance to say good night to a woman who wasn't asking him for anything. "Could I see your clinic tomorrow?" he asked. "I'd like to understand more about the work you do." "If you'd like," Amara said. "But it's nothing glamorous. Just basic health care for people who need it." "I think," Asher said quietly, "that might be exactly what I need to see." As he watched her walk away through the gently falling snow, Asher realized that everything he thought he knew about what made life meaningful was about to be challenged by a woman who had chosen compassion over comfort, service over success. He just had no idea that the woman he was falling for was hiding a secret that would force him to confront the true cost of the empire he'd built. The next morning, Asher woke to the sound of church bells and children's laughter echoing through the village square. For the first time in years, he'd slept without his phone beside his bed, without the constant ping of notifications pulling him from his dreams. After a simple breakfast of fresh bread and local honey, he walked across the village to Amara's clinic. The building was modest, a converted chalet with a hand-painted sign that read Bergdorf Community Health Center in 3 languages. He found Amara in a small examination room, carefully listening to an elderly man's chest with a stethoscope. She wore simple scrubs and moved with the quiet confidence of someone completely comfortable in a medical setting. "Herr Müller, your breathing sounds much better today," she said in German, then noticed Asher in the doorway. "I'll be with you in just a moment." Asher watched as she finished the examination, prescribed medication, and spent several minutes explaining the treatment plan with patience and care that seemed to come naturally to her. When the elderly man left, he was clearly feeling not just physically better, but emotionally reassured. "Sorry about the wait," Amara said, washing her hands thoroughly. "Would you like a tour?" The clinic was small but impeccably organized. 2 examination rooms, a basic laboratory, a pharmacy stocked with essential medications, and a waiting area filled with wooden chairs and children's toys. "How many patients do you see?" Asher asked. "It varies. Maybe 20 to 30 people a week during winter, more in summer when the hiking injuries increase." Amara showed him the laboratory equipment. Basic diagnostics, blood work, urinalysis, throat cultures. Nothing complicated, but enough to handle most routine healthcare needs. "And you run this all by yourself?" "I have a nursing assistant who comes in 3 days a week, and Dr. Hoffman from the Valley makes rounds once a month for more complex cases." Asher studied the medical equipment with growing confusion. The diagnostic machines were high-end, far more sophisticated than he'd expect in a rural clinic. The medication inventory was extensive and current. Most puzzling of all, everything was immaculately maintained and organized with the precision of someone with serious medical training. "Amara," he said carefully, "what exactly is your medical background?" She paused in her explanation of the lab equipment. "I have training in community health." "What kind of training?" "The kind that lets me help people." Her evasiveness was becoming more obvious, but before Asher could press further, the clinic door burst open and a young woman rushed in carrying a screaming toddler. "Amara, something's wrong with Emma. She won't stop crying and she's burning up with fever." Amara immediately shifted into what Asher recognized as emergency mode. Her entire demeanor changed. Focused, authoritative, moving with the quick precision of someone who'd handled medical crises many times before. "Bring her to examination room 1, Amara said calmly. "When did the fever start?" "This morning. She was fine yesterday, but she woke up crying and won't eat anything." Asher watched from the doorway as Amara examined the little girl with obvious expertise. She checked the child's throat, ears, and lymph nodes, took her temperature and pulse, and listened to her chest and back with the stethoscope. "It's likely a throat infection," Amara diagnosed. "See how red and swollen her tonsils are? That's what's making her so uncomfortable." "Is it serious?" the mother asked anxiously. "Not if we treat it promptly." I'm going to give her an antibiotic injection now, and then you'll need to continue with oral antibiotics for the next week. Amara prepared the injection with practiced efficiency, somehow managing to distract the toddler with a stuffed animal while administering the shot so quickly that the child barely had time to react. She should start feeling better within 24 hours, Amara explained, writing out detailed instructions for the mother. But bring her back if the fever doesn't break by tomorrow evening, or if she develops any new symptoms. After the mother and child left, Asher stared at Amara with new understanding. That wasn't community health training, he said quietly. That was advanced medical diagnosis and treatment. Amara began cleaning the examination room with unnecessary focus. I have experience with pediatric care. Amara, who are you really? Before she could answer, Asher's phone rang. He'd been ignoring calls all morning, but this one showed his head of medical research, Dr. Patricia Vance. I'm sorry, he told Amara. I need to take this. Asher, thank God, Dr. Vance said immediately. We have a crisis. 3 more hospitals are reporting failures with the CardioSafe monitoring system. Asher felt his blood turn cold. CardioSafe was one of Kane Technologies' most successful medical devices. Heart monitors used in cardiac care units worldwide. What kind of failures? The same as before. Monitors showing normal readings when patients are actually in distress. We've now confirmed 12 deaths in the past 6 months where the CardioSafe failed to alert medical staff to cardiac events. 12 deaths. 12 families destroyed because his company's medical device had given false readings to doctors trying to save lives. Are we pulling the devices from the market? Asher asked. Legal is fighting it. They say a recall would admit liability and cost us billions in lawsuits. And what about the people who are dying because our product doesn't work? That's a decision above my pay grade, Asher. Asher looked up to see Amara watching him with an expression he couldn't read. I'll be back in Chicago tomorrow, he told Dr. Vance. Schedule an emergency board meeting. He hung up and found Amara staring at him with something that looked like recognition dawning in her eyes. Kane Technologies, she said quietly. You're Asher Kane. Yes, the CardioSafe heart monitor. That's your company's device. How do you know about CardioSafe? Amara sank into one of the waiting room chairs as if her legs could no longer support her. Because, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, CardioSafe monitors killed 3 of my patients in London. That's why I left my practice and came to these mountains. The words hit Asher like a physical blow. What do you mean your practice? I mean I was Dr. Amara Okafor, head of cardiac surgery at London Bridge Hospital. I specialized in pediatric heart surgery. Children with congenital defects, complex cardiac conditions. Asher felt the world tilting around him. You're a cardiac surgeon? I was a cardiac surgeon. Tears were streaming down Amara's face now. Until your company's defective monitors failed to alert my team to complications during 3 separate pediatric heart surgeries. Amara, 8-year-old Timothy Bradley died on my operating table because the CardioSafe showed his heart rhythm as stable when he was actually going into cardiac arrest. 6-year-old Priya Patel died in recovery because the monitor failed to detect her arrhythmia until it was too late to intervene. Asher felt sick to his stomach. And the 3rd, 4-year-old Marcus Johnson, the most brilliant, funny little boy you can imagine. He was born with a complex heart defect, had already survived 2 surgeries. His parents trusted me to fix his heart so he could grow up to play football like his big brother. Amara was crying openly now, years of suppressed grief and guilt pouring out. The CardioSafe monitor showed normal readings throughout the entire 6-hour surgery. Normal heart rate, normal rhythm, no signs of distress. But Marcus was actually in severe cardiac distress for the final 2 hours. By the time we realized what was happening, it was too late. Jesus Christ, Asher whispered. I held that little boy while he died, Asher. I held him and promised his parents that I'd done everything possible to save him. But I hadn't, because I was trusting medical equipment that was giving me false information. Have you ever discovered that something you created or were part of had unintended consequences that hurt innocent people? How did you cope with that responsibility? Share your experience in the comments. Asher sank into the chair beside her, his mind reeling with the implications of what she was telling him. The investigation afterward found that all 3 monitors had the same defect, a software glitch that caused them to display cached data instead of real-time readings during critical cardiac events. Why didn't we know about this? Why didn't the hospitals report the failures? They did report them. Kane Technologies sent technicians who claimed the devices were functioning normally. When pressed, your legal team suggested that the deaths were due to surgical error, not equipment failure. Asher remembered the lawsuits now. 3 families in London who'd sued Kane Technologies for medical device failure. His legal team had fought the cases aggressively, hiring expert witnesses who testified that the surgeries themselves were flawed, not the monitoring equipment. We destroyed you, he realized with horror. You destroyed my reputation, my career, my confidence in my ability to save lives. The medical board investigated me for malpractice. Even though I was eventually cleared, the damage was done. No hospital would hire a pediatric surgeon who'd lost 3 children to surgical complications. So you came here. I came here because I couldn't trust myself to operate on another child. But I still had medical knowledge, and these villages needed basic health care. I thought maybe I could still help people in small ways. Asher stared at this remarkable woman who'd given up a prestigious surgical career to serve rural communities, all because his company's defective product had destroyed her faith in her own abilities. Amara, I am so sorry. If I had known, what would you have done? Recalled the CardioSafe monitors? Admitted that your company's negligence killed children? Yes, Asher said immediately. Of course. Really? Because according to your head of medical research, you have 12 more deaths now, and your legal team is still fighting a recall. The accusation hit home because it was true. Even now, knowing what he knew, Asher's first instinct was to protect his company's financial interests rather than admit fault. This is different. Now I understand the human cost. The human cost was always there, Asher. You just chose not to see it. They sat in silence for several minutes, the weight of this revelation settling between them. Finally, Asher spoke. What would it take to make this right? You can't make it right. Timothy and Priya and Marcus are dead. Their families are destroyed. I'll never be able to operate again. But I can prevent more deaths. I can recall every CardioSafe device, admit fault, compensate the families who've been hurt. At what cost to Kane Technologies? I don't care what it costs. Amara looked at him searchingly. 3 days ago, would you have cared? Asher thought about the man he'd been when his car broke down on the mountain road. Focused on mergers and acquisitions, frustrated by gold-digging girlfriends, completely insulated from the real-world consequences of his business decisions. Probably, he admitted. So what's changed? I met you. I saw what real purpose looks like. I saw what it means to choose helping people over helping yourself. And now you want to be that kind of person? I want to be the kind of person who deserves to know someone like you. Amara wiped her tears and stood up. I need to check on Mrs. Weber's blood pressure. You should probably head back to Chicago and deal with your crisis. What about us? What about this connection we have? What connection? You're a billionaire CEO whose company destroyed my life. I'm a disgraced surgeon hiding in the mountains. What exactly did you think was going to happen here? I thought maybe we could help each other heal. You can't heal from something you caused, Asher. And I can't heal from something that's still happening to other people. She walked toward the examination room, then paused in the doorway. If you really want to help, stop the CardioSafe monitors from killing more children. Everything else is just words. As Asher walked back across the village to collect his repaired car, he realized that the woman he'd fallen for had just presented him with the biggest test of his life. He could return to Chicago, minimize the recall, protect his company's profits, and probably never see Amara again. Or he could choose justice over profit, even if it destroyed everything he'd built. The question was, which choice would let him live with himself? And which choice might earn him the forgiveness of the woman who'd shown him what integrity actually looked like? Asher's flight back to Chicago gave him 8 hours to make the most important decision of his life. As the private jet crossed the Atlantic, he sat with his laptop open, reviewing 3 years of CardioSafe incident reports that his legal team had been quietly settling out of court. 15 deaths. Not 12, as Dr. Vance had reported, but 15 confirmed fatalities directly linked to CardioSafe monitor failures. Timothy Bradley, Priya Patel, Marcus Johnson. The 3 children whose deaths had driven Amara from her surgical career were just the beginning of a pattern of corporate negligence that Asher had been too focused on profits to notice. Each death represented a family destroyed, a future stolen, a trust in medical technology shattered. And each death could have been prevented if Kane Technologies had issued a recall after the first reported failures instead of fighting lawsuits and blaming medical professionals. His phone rang constantly during the flight, board members, legal advisors, PR specialists all wanting to discuss damage control and liability mitigation. Asher ignored them all. Instead, he called his personal assistant. "Jennifer, I need you to schedule a press conference for tomorrow morning. Full media presence. Every major network, medical journals, international outlets." "Sir, shouldn't we coordinate with legal and PR before?" "No coordination. Just me, speaking directly to the media. What should I tell them the conference is about?" "The truth." The next morning, Asher stood behind a podium in Kane Technologies' main auditorium, facing a room full of reporters, medical professionals, and families who'd been affected by CardioSafe failures. Behind him, a large screen displayed photos of the children who had died. 15 beautiful faces that would never grow up because his company had prioritized profits over safety. His board of directors sat in the front row, their expressions ranging from confusion to fury. His legal team had threatened to resign en masse when he refused to let them vet his statement. "My name is Asher Kane, and I am the CEO of Kane Technologies," he began, his voice steady despite the enormity of what he was about to do. "I'm here today to take full responsibility for the CardioSafe monitoring system failures that have resulted in 15 confirmed deaths and countless other medical complications over the past 3 years. The room erupted in camera flashes and shouted questions, but Asher continued. CardioSafe monitors contain a software defect that causes them to display cached data instead of real-time cardiac readings during critical events. We have known about this defect since the first reported failures in London 3 years ago. Instead of immediately recalling the devices, Kane Technologies chose to fight lawsuits and blame medical professionals for deaths that were directly caused by our faulty equipment." He paused, looking directly into the cameras that would carry this admission around the world. "As of this moment, I am ordering an immediate global recall of all CardioSafe monitoring devices. Every hospital, clinic, and medical facility using these monitors will receive replacement equipment within 72 hours, free of charge." The financial implications hit the room like a bomb. CardioSafe devices were installed in over 3,000 medical facilities worldwide. The recall would cost Kane Technologies nearly $2 billion. Additionally, Asher continued, Kane Technologies will establish a victims' compensation fund with an initial allocation of $5 billion to provide financial support for families affected by CardioSafe failures, and to fund cardiac care research aimed at preventing similar tragedies. Several board members stood up and walked out, clearly unwilling to be associated with what they saw as corporate suicide. I want to speak directly to the medical professionals who have been blamed for deaths caused by our equipment, Asher said, his voice growing stronger. Dr. Amara Okafor of London, Dr. Patricia Chen of Singapore, Dr. Michael Rodriguez of Sao Paulo, and dozens of others. You are not responsible for these deaths. Kane Technologies is responsible. Our negligence destroyed your careers and your faith in your ability to save lives, and for that, I am profoundly sorry. In the audience, Asher could see several people crying. Family members of victims, medical professionals who'd been scapegoated, journalists who'd covered these stories without knowing the full truth. Finally, Asher said, I am announcing my resignation as CEO of Kane Technologies, effective immediately. The company will be restructured under new leadership with a primary focus on medical safety and ethical business practices. Every product we develop will undergo enhanced safety testing, and we will establish an independent oversight board to ensure that profit never again takes precedence over human life. Have you ever had to choose between protecting yourself and doing what you knew was right, even when it cost you everything? What helped you make that decision? Share your story in the comments. The press conference ended in chaos, with reporters shouting questions, board members staging a revolt, and stock prices plummeting in real time. But Asher felt something he hadn't experienced in years: peace. He'd finally chosen justice over profit, truth over self-preservation. Now he had to find out if it was enough to earn Amara's forgiveness. 3 days later, Asher stood once again in the village of Bergdorf, but this time he arrived by train, carrying a single suitcase and wearing jeans and a sweater instead of his usual corporate armor. The news of his press conference had reached the remote Alpine village. Hans the mechanic greeted him with newfound respect, and Maria at the Gasthaus looked at him with something like approval. She's at the clinic, Maria said without being asked. Been working nonstop since the news broke. Word is spreading through the medical community about what really happened to those children. Asher found Amara in her small office, surrounded by letters, emails, and medical journals. She looked up when he entered, and he saw that she'd been crying. Job offers, she said, gesturing to the papers scattered across her desk. 15 major hospitals want to hire me back. London Bridge Hospital offered me department head of pediatric cardiology with a formal apology and a salary that's, well, it's substantial. That's wonderful news. Is it? Because I spent 3 years convinced that I was a failure, that I'd killed those children through my own incompetence. Now I find out I was just the scapegoat for corporate negligence. Asher sat down across from her desk. I know my apology doesn't undo the damage. Your apology cost you everything, Amara interrupted. Your company, your fortune, your entire life as you knew it. Why? Because you were right. Because children were dying while I worried about stock prices. Because I met someone who showed me what integrity looks like, and I realized I wanted to become that kind of person. And now, what happens to Asher Kane now that he's not a billionaire CEO anymore? Asher had been asking himself the same question. I don't know. I've never been anything else. What do you want to be? I want to be someone who helps instead of someone who just accumulates wealth. I want to be someone who sees the human cost of business decisions. I want to be someone who deserves to know you. Amara studied his face for a long moment. There's something you should know. The medical board in London has cleared me completely. My surgical privileges have been reinstated. I could go back to operating on children's hearts. You should. You're brilliant, and there are children who need the skills you have. But there are also people here who need me. Mrs. Weber, little Klaus, the families who've come to depend on this clinic. So what are you going to do? I'm going to try to find a way to do both. London Bridge Hospital has agreed to let me work part-time, spending 6 months a year doing cardiac surgery and 6 months here in Bergdorf running the community clinic. Asher felt his heart sink. So you're leaving? I'm leaving in 2 weeks to start my surgical residency refresher program. But I'll be back in 6 months. And then I'll need someone to help run the clinic while I'm away. Someone who understands systems and problem solving and how to make things work efficiently. Asher looked around the small clinic that had become a lifeline for the mountain communities. Are you offering me a job? I'm offering you a chance to use your skills for something that matters. The pay is terrible, the hours are long, and the work is often heartbreaking. It sounds perfect. There's one condition. What? No more lies, no more secrets, no more hiding who we really are. If we're going to do this, build something together, help people together, it has to be built on complete honesty. Asher nodded. Complete honesty. Starting now. Good. Then I have something to tell you. What? I've been in love with you since that first dinner at the Gasthaus, when you told me about feeling isolated by your wealth. I've been terrified to admit it because I thought you were everything I'd learned to distrust about powerful men. But watching you give up everything to save lives you'll never meet, that's the kind of man I want to love. Asher felt tears spring to his eyes. I love you too. I love your strength, your compassion, your refusal to compromise your principles. I love that you saw something worth saving in me even when I couldn't see it myself. So what happens now? Now I learn how to run a medical clinic. You save children's hearts. We figure out how to build a life that's about service instead of profit. It won't be easy. Long-distance relationship, different worlds, completely different from anything either of us has known before. The best things usually aren't easy. Amara smiled, and Asher saw the woman he'd fallen in love with that first night, brilliant, caring, unafraid of hard choices. Dr. Okafor, he said formally, would you be willing to teach a former billionaire how to make a difference in the world? Mr. Kane, she replied, I thought you'd never ask. 6 months later, Asher stood in the observation gallery of London Bridge Hospital, watching through the window as Dr. Amara Okafor performed surgery on a 7-year-old girl with a complex congenital heart defect. Her hands moved with incredible precision, every cut and suture placed with the skill of someone who'd spent years perfecting her craft. The cardiac monitors, new, safe, thoroughly tested devices that had replaced the recalled CardioSafe systems, showed steady, strong heart rhythms as Amara worked to repair the child's damaged heart. First time watching cardiac surgery? Asked Dr. Patricia Chun, the hospital's chief of surgery. Yes, it's incredible. She's one of the best pediatric cardiac surgeons in the world. We're lucky to have her back. The world is lucky to have her back. 4 hours later, the surgery was completed successfully. Asher waited outside the recovery room as Amara spoke with the little girl's parents, explaining the procedure and the excellent prognosis for their daughter's full recovery. When she finally emerged from the hospital, still in scrubs but glowing with the satisfaction of a life saved, Asher was waiting with coffee and a warm coat. How did it go? He asked, though her smile had already answered the question. Perfect repair. She'll be able to run and play and do everything other children do. No restrictions, no limitations. How does it feel? Being back in surgery? Like coming home? Like remembering who I was always meant to be? They walked together through the London streets toward the small flat Amara kept near the hospital during her surgical rotations. How's the clinic? She asked. Any medical emergencies I need to know about? Mrs. Weber's blood pressure is stable. Little Klaus learned to use his inhaler properly, and Hans asked me to check his cholesterol levels next week. And how are you adjusting to village life? I love it. I love waking up knowing that my work actually helps people. I love being part of a community instead of just accumulating wealth in isolation. Any regrets about giving up the billionaire lifestyle? Asher thought about his old life. The mansions, the private jets, the endless parade of people who wanted something from him. None. Well, maybe one. What? I regret that it took me so long to understand what really mattered. Amara stopped walking and turned to face him. What really matters? Love that's based on who you are, not what you own. Work that heals instead of just generating profit. Being part of something bigger than yourself. And you matter most of all. As they kissed under the London streetlights, Asher marveled at the journey that had brought them here. A broken-down car in the Swiss Alps had led to losing everything he thought he wanted and finding everything he actually needed. Ready to head back to Bergdorf next week? Amara asked. Ready to spend the rest of my life learning how to be the man you fell in love with. You already are that man, Asher. You became him the moment you chose truth over profit. And you became the surgeon you were meant to be the moment you chose to trust your skills again. What do you think defines a person's true worth? Their wealth and status, or their willingness to sacrifice for others? How has your definition of success changed over time? Share your thoughts below. 1 year later, Asher and Amara stood together in the Bergdorf Community Center, surrounded by villagers celebrating the grand opening of the expanded medical facility. What had once been a small clinic was now a comprehensive healthcare center serving 6 mountain communities, staffed by rotating specialists from major hospitals who donated their time to ensure rural families had access to quality medical care. The Kane Okafor Medical Center, Amara read from the dedication plaque, established to ensure that geographic isolation never again prevents families from receiving life-saving health care. Think it will make a difference? Asher asked. I know it will. Every child who doesn't have to travel 4 hours for basic medical care, every parent who can get their questions answered by a trained professional, every emergency that gets treated quickly because we have the right equipment, it all matters. What about the other centers? The success of the Bergdorf facility had inspired similar projects in underserved communities around the world. The compensation fund from Kane Technologies was funding rural medical centers in 12 countries, all staffed by volunteers who'd learned that the most rewarding work was often the least lucrative. Breaking ground next month in Kenya, Guatemala, and rural Alaska, Amara said. Turns out there are a lot of medical professionals who want to do meaningful work if they can afford to. As the celebration continued around them, Asher pulled Amara aside to a quiet corner of the center. Dr. Okafor, he said formally, I have a question for you. What kind of question? The kind that requires getting down on one knee. Amara's eyes widened as Asher pulled out a simple diamond ring. Nothing flashy or ostentatious. Just a beautiful stone that reflected the light like the snow on the alpine peaks visible through the center's windows. Amara Okafor, he said, kneeling in the medical center they'd built together. You saved my life by showing me what it means to live with purpose. You taught me that the only wealth that matters is the love you give and the lives you touch. Will you marry me? Only if you promise me something, Amara said, tears streaming down her face. Anything. Promise me that we'll always choose love over fear, service over profit, and truth over convenience. Promise me that we'll build a life that honors the children we save and the communities we serve. I promise, Asher said, slipping the ring onto her finger. I promise to spend every day trying to be worthy of the woman who taught me what integrity looks like. As the villagers cheered and children ran around their legs, Asher and Amara kissed in the medical center, where they'd learned that the most profound healing often happened when broken people chose to help fix a broken world. Some love stories began with deception and ended with truth. Some fortunes were lost so that lives could be saved. And sometimes, the people who thought they were beyond redemption discovered that the path to forgiveness led through service, sacrifice, and the courage to choose what was right over what was easy. Asher Kane had found his fortune in the Swiss Alps after all. Not in gold or silver, but in the love of a woman who'd shown him that the richest life was one spent lifting others up.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.